Hi, I'm Jenny Sjöholm. I'm a conservation specialist and senior lecturer in urban design and conservation. I will give a brief presentation of some of my research and presenting transforming towns in northern Sweden and how heritage and heritization is affected by this. And main focus will be on how heritization is interacting with town planning when these towns are changing. And this is based on studying planning documents and doing observations what is happening on site in these towns. And the towns I have been looking at is, for examples, in northernmost Sweden. It is Piteå, Svartestaden, Malmberget and Koskenkorva, and Kiruna. And they were selected in this study because they are urban environments in Norrbotten region. They are heritage sites of national interest due to their heritage values. And they also show different types of structural changes that has an effect on and changing the built environments. To start off with Piteå, the town was founded in 1621. Its town plan is typical for the 17th century planning. And the whole town was designated heritage site of national interest in 1971. And changes today means that it's a town that is challenged by urbanization, densification of the town center, meaning that there's an ambition to build higher buildings, to have a denser town center, which means that there are shifting scales in the town, which is challenging the existing more small-scale town when you come with these higher developments taking place. Svartestaden, it started to develop in 1894. Since 1933, it is a neighborhood located in Luleå. But it was originally developed surrounding the industrial development that was taking place in the area, close to the harbor. The area was designated a heritage site of national interest in 1987. And before that, and well, frankly, also sometime after that, the town and the settlement was challenged because of the development of the industry. There were demands of having the settlement being demolished to prioritize the expanding industry with the steel works and by the shipping harbor for the iron ore. This constant threat of having the place demolished also meant the lack of maintenance of the buildings in the area. Many buildings were also demolished, but also it's fair to say that it wasn't much effort put into actually maintaining it because you didn't really know if the buildings would remain the next few years or not. This gradually changed during the 1980s when the town was started to be conceptualized as a heritage site. And now it's more the opposite problem than neglect and demolitions. You can clearly see there is gentrification going on. That is to say that the former workers' neighborhood is transforming with being an attractive area that many people move in and want to live in. It leads to bigger developments. You want more bigger houses, and you have a lot of pressure on development that is not quite in line with the character of the original area and the way it should be conserved according to the planning documents. Malmberget in the inlands, it has its origins from the 17th century when iron ore started to be mined in the region, but it developed properly from 1888 when large-scale mining started, and this was also when a railway was inaugurated connecting the mines with the shipping harbors. And Malmberget, it started off as a shanty town because it wasn't properly developed, and the workers working the mines, they built houses from whatever building material they could get hold of. And it took a couple of decades before it was properly being planned, a town plan was put in place, and proper housing was built. The area, both Malmberget and the nearby mining town of Koskenkorva, was designated a heritage site of national interest in 1987. But already then, and still continuing today, there are big urban transformation taking place due to mining. Already in the 1950s, a huge open pit started to develop in the middle of Malmberget, cutting Malmberget into two parts. And to continue mining, that means that most of, if not all of Malmberget will disappear and gradually be demolished. Big parts of it has already vanished, and the next few years to come, even more will be demolished. When it comes to the historic environments and the historic buildings, there has been an effort to preserve them through relocation. And about 20 historic buildings have been relocated to Koskenkorva, forming a new historic environment on this site. A similar situation is taking place in Kiruna. Kiruna was established in 1900. It is said to be built as a model company town, and it was designated as a heritage site in 1971. Also in Kiruna, due to mining, there is a rapid urban transformation taking place, which means that a significant part of the historic town will be demolished. Big parts have been demolished already, and more will be torn down the years to come. And about 50 historic buildings have been relocated or will be relocated in the next few years. So, what can we conclude from a heritization point of view in this? Well, one thing is that once something has been designated as heritage, it is usually reaffirmed as being heritage in the planning processes, in various urban planning schemes that is taken forwards. Another obvious thing is what is designated as cultural heritage. It is very much reliant on the knowledge you have on the built environment. When the heritage site was designated as national interest, it was very much dependent on the knowledge at the time of the sites. And it's also obvious that as more knowledge has been gained on the sites due to investigations by the local councils or by research being done, this has gradually been incorporated and also being a foundation for re-evaluating and refining and redefining the heritage sites. However, even if a conservation site and the National Heritage Site is meant to be conserved in a long-term perspective, it's not always the case. And a key feature that is crucial for actually implementing and actually conserving the built heritage, it is that the conservation officers, such as town architects and planners in the councils, but also the local politicians, have a knowledge about the sites and are interested in them as being cultural heritage. If they are not, it is very difficult to maintain conservation of the sites, but if there is an interest and a knowledge about it, then it's a whole different kind of situation in the town planning and how you long-term work with the historic values and the cultural significance of the sites. One thing that's also quite obvious looking at these four examples is that heritization contributes to creating stereotypes to a certain extent. That means that through the descriptions of the sites, how they are protected in the planning documents, that helps creating certain narratives of the buildings and the built environments. And what is highlighted is, for instance, the small-scale wooden town of Piteå, the model town of Kiruna, and the shanty towns of Svartestaden and Malmberget. And to some extent, these narratives are true. That is one part of the history. And these narratives, they have a huge influence on what is being perceived as significant for preservation and how to conserve the towns. But it's also have an influence on what is being likely or more easily being demolished. Buildings that doesn't really fit the narratives, they can more easily be neglected, and it could be more easily argued that they can be demolished and replaced with other buildings. And this in turn obviously have a risk of diminish the complexity of the towns and the history of the towns and the narratives and the heritage that is possible to have, and that different stakeholder that different groups and different inhabitants can actually perceive in the towns. Even if it can be different stories told, what is authorized and legitimized by the planning, it is a very limited selection of all that can be perceived as being significant cultural heritage. And this is reinforced through the town planning in various ways.